This is the Patrick Alexander Podcast. Welcome to your upgrade.
Thank you once again for tuning into the show. This podcast is about personal responsibility. The guests on this podcast have stopped negotiating with their health and they started living in a body that actually works again. Their personal stories show what changes when people stop outsourcing their health, their body, and their life, and they start taking responsibility for how they live. Today, I'm joined by Joff Ylarde, a registered nurse from Australia who spent several years actually navigating keto and carnivore while working full-time at the bedside. Now, this is not a diet success story, but it's a conversation about what happens when the system you trust stops working for you and you're forced to take responsibility for your own health. Welcome to the show, Joff.
Thank you for having me on, Patrick. It's an absolute honor to be here.
Amazing. Thank you. Joff, so as you sit here now, what do you notice in yourself when you think about your story?
Well, to start off, for your viewers and your listeners, my name is Joff. I am based here in Australia, and I've been on a health journey pretty much my entire life. But the biggest pivotal moment towards my health going in the direction that I think it should be is when I started the carnivore diet. And so hence, why I come on social media to talk about and really to promote that lifestyle, which is the carnivore diet and the things that I've learned along the way. Now, as Patrick, you mentioned, I'm a registered nurse. So I've got the perspective of someone who works in the face of chronic disease pretty much day in, day out. So if you've got a chronic disease out there that you throw at me, you name it, whatever it is, diabetes, heart disease, strokes, cancers, I have been at the front of treating people, at the most vulnerable. And I've got a lot of things to say, basically. My story personally is no different from a lot of people. I basically grew up in a world where the diet that we were told to follow was leading me to a place that was really not good, basically. I was a carb addict growing up. As a child, it's always been in my nature to gravitate towards carbohydrates and sweets. My family knew that. I knew that, or I believed in that. I was just a big sweet tooth. Even to the stage where I'd eat so much fruits that it actually sent me to a hospital one stage. But that's a deep story that we may or may not uncover here. But
wow, I guess I would love to hear that at some point during this podcast. But please continue.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the sweet cravings and the gravitation towards sweet foods has been something that I've always been aware of since I was a child. And so, leading up to adulthood, you could really see that it started to take a toll on my metabolic health. But to sort of bring it back to a point in my life where I really started to notice the health issues, it all started when it all coincided with when I started my career as a nurse. And when I studied in university, they required us to get blood tests done. So I had blood tests done to check for things that they required, but I thought I'd just get a full blood panel just to see what's going on with my health. Now, keep in mind, I'm someone who's got a history of heart disease, diabetes in my family. It runs deep, pretty much from all the males in my family. They've all had heart disease. My grandfather's died from a stroke and diabetes complications. So I knew that, I had to be careful. Now, the blood test that I did before going off into what we call clinical placements, it showed that I had high cholesterol. Of course, being brought up in, I wouldn't say fear, but always awareness of your health, I had to do something about it. So, I wasn't one to just sit back. I asked the doctor, what do I need to do? And the doctors basically gave me the options of, well, you could go down the route of fixing up your lifestyle, all right, which is eat a clean diet and exercise more. Cool. I could do that. But the one thing that sort of gave me a bit of a red alert early on was the doctor mentioned medications. Because I had this history of heart disease in my family, the doctor offered, well, if things don't improve, or it's better to start thinking about it now before it's too late, we could put you on a statin.
How old
So
were
that
you, Joff, at the time?
I was 17 at the time.
You were 17.
Yeah, 17 at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Turning 18. But yes, that's exactly it. I was shocked at how young a doctor would say you need to go on medications. I don't think that they implied go on it straight away, but to have it brought up at such a young age, I thought, wow, that's serious. So, I opted for lifestyle. Let's tackle this head on. It bring me, I was motivated. I was very health conscious, as you would say. And he gave me a list of things to do. Go and see the dietitian. Exercise more. Maybe sign up to a gym. And, let's check your bloods in a year. So I said, game on. Let's do it. I'll go see the dietitian. And they gave me a diet plan, which is nothing out of the ordinary of what you'd hear a dietitian or nutritionist tell you. Eat your greens. At the time, it was, eat a low-fat diet, and plenty of grains, fruits, vegetables, fiber, all of that. And make sure to always avoid saturated fats, just to, keep it at the minimal if possible. So I said, all right, cool. I'll follow that diet. And it turned out to be coinciding with what the bro sciences tell you. So the other thing that I got into was I started going to the gym, and I absolutely fell in love with it. This was another world and another story path that takes me to, a whole bunch of pathways in life. But regardless, it was very much marrying up with the same advice that personal trainers and coaches would tell you. Eat a clean diet and train hard at the gym. And that's what I did for about a year. I was training hard, eating clean, eating low fat. And a year later, came back to the doctor's office, did the blood test. Nothing changed. My cholesterol remained the same. I lost weight. I put on muscle. I look good. So I'm thinking I'm doing the right things. Yeah. The trainer is telling me, I'm making so much improvements. I'm looking good. So maybe it's just, I don't know, a one-off. But this went on for, a good couple of years. It was just back and forth at the doctor's, same results, high cholesterol. And it got to a point, maybe a couple of visits in, maybe 4 or 5 years down the track, the doctors really started to push hard on the message. Joff, I think you need to start taking medications now. It
And in the
seems to be
meantime,
a
you were following the same diet, you were doing your workouts, you were doing exactly what you were told to do in order to be a healthy man.
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Correct. I followed the advice to the T. I must say this. I'm human just like everyone else. There were moments where, of course, I lived my life. But if we're talking about consistency of maintaining a lifestyle that you would consider healthy, I would give myself a good solid B plus at least. I was, I, you know, I was training my butt off at the gym. I actually got really passionate about uh, strength training, and I even got into a sport called powerlifting. And it was really, I don't know how else to put it, but I revolved my life around the gym and whatever it took for me to try and be healthy. And it kind of did my head in. It really psychologically messed me up every time I went to the doctors, because you know I'm doing the right things, but I'm feeling like I'm being told that I'm not. And then I would say towards my middle 20s or early 20s even, I started to feel the symptoms that were associated with heart disease. Um, and that was things like chest pain and shortness of breath. Now, the doctors, you know, weren't too concerned, of course, but to me it was quite concerning because of family history and the fact that I'm doing things right. Does that mean that it really is a genetic issue that I've got? Am I just someone who's drawn the short straw in life? So it got to a point where the symptoms were just getting, I wouldn't say hard to manage, but they were becoming more noticeable. And I could see metabolically, I was fitting that criteria slowly down the funnel. My weight was increasing, blood pressure going up, blood sugars going up, cholesterol going up. This was it. This was genetics, right? This is what they're saying. The doctors are right. So, um, at one point I kind of just said, well, if this is my fate, I'm just going to let go of the things that I find aren't really helping me in my life, which was the diet. That was the first thing that left, that went out the door. I focused on the gym. I'm going to focus on my performance because, I love it so much. I'm doing so well. I'm getting strong. I'm competing in these sports. And, it's just, I kind of used it as a way to just mask what was going on in my life. And it was, it was tough. Once I let my diet go, I noticed that it really, my health just declined from there.
What do you mean by
I,
you let your diet go? How did your diet change from how you were doing it rigidly for those years to when you start dropping it? What was the difference?
Well, I stopped eating the so-called clean, and I just went with let's go standard Western. I was in my mid-20s. I needed to live my life, is what I told myself. Worrying about something that I can't fix isn't gonna do anything. So I'm just gonna enjoy life as I see it. And at that time, social media was big on the whole foodie culture, traveling and seeing different restaurants, trying different foods. So I'm like, no, you know what? I'll just stick to eating whatever's, my taste buds tell me. And, the sugar addict in me was like, let's just go all out
I'm
and
back. Yay.
I'm back.
Yeah.
And my training was, again, I was trying to mask what was going on with my life with training. So I put all my focus on weightlifting and powerlifting. And that really drove me to a point where physically you could see it in my photos. It was just catching up. My bad lifestyle, my bad diet was catching up to me. I
You
started
were starting
to
to look like a power lifter, basically,
I was there, man. I was there.
because
I
they
didn't
all
care
look,
about
they're all,
yeah. I didn't care about making weight anymore. I was like, I came into powerlifting. I started at the 66 kilo weight class. And after 2 years, I was, competing in the 93. So I was going in the big boys. Yeah. I started to go to the big boys. And so, you know, I, I knew it was bad for me. I knew that this was not the way to go. But in my mind, it was like, well, it's going to happen. When is the doctor's going to put me on the medications? When is what we call like saying we say here in Australia, when is shit going to hit the fan, really? And it happened quite quick. It was towards the end of my 20s, my late 20s. My blood pressure was high. I was having more and more chest pain episodes. I was going to emergency for it. I started to get the investigations done. Seeing the cardiologist, doing all the stress tests, doing all the Holter monitoring, the whole lot to see and diagnose me with heart disease. And that put me in a spiral of anxiety and depression to be at such a young age and to already meet my fate, and to have no control over my health. It really drove me into a deep, dark place. But there were things in my life that kind of, told me to just keep going. There's got to be an answer to this. There is a way for you to break out of this. And it wasn't until one of my workmates started talking about low-carb keto. And I remember it was at work, and he was talking to a bunch of nursing students about carbs being inflammatory. And I thought to myself, that is some nonsense. That's bullshit. Sorry,
Yeah, because
I'm sorry
this
if
was
yeah.
I was thinking, Joff. Is like you were a nurse at the time. You
Yeah.
kind of knew the medical system. You were doing everything
Yeah.
according to the book. I assume.
Yeah.
It must have felt really disempowering that you knew what you were doing was according to the guidelines, yet there didn't seem any way out. It was only getting worse, if you wish.
No. Nope, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I was following to the T, Patrick. And of course, I shouldn't say that I was always strictly following it to the T. There were obviously moments where I lapsed out, but for good long periods of my life, I was following the guidelines. Now, where was I? Yeah, that's right. So I was talking to my workmate about this keto diet, and he told me to go watch this video by Robert Lustig. It's a documentary called Sugar: The Bitter Truth. I got into it and I watched it. I thought, wow, yeah, carbs might be not as good as we think they are. We've been told, and I can always clearly remember this on my textbook. Even in my first year as a nurse, there was an excerpt or a part about gluconeogenesis. Your body can create its own glucose, and that stuck to me. I can even the textbook is just over there. I can actually point it out, and it just clicked to me. Then I'm like, maybe your body can make its own carbohydrates. But in nursing school and in the whole healthcare system in general, and what they tell you in mainstream is that carbohydrates are essential. Isn't that what they told you, Patrick? Carbs are essential?
To be honest, I don't know if I've been told carbs were essential, but it's put in a way that you are made to believe they're essential because you have to eat them.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and of course, who isn't gonna trust in what the doctors and the experts are saying, right? But
Exactly, they studied for years.
yeah, they studied for years. So, I was a bit baffled, and that red alert in my brain just kept saying, this is crazy. But at the same time, I'm like, I've tried everything right now. I've tried, following what the mainstream says. I even went to the extremes of going as low fat as possible, i.e., I went down the vegan pathway for a couple of months. And my health still hasn't improved. So maybe, just maybe, this low-carb keto thing might work. So I don't know what it was. I think it was out of desperation. I don't clearly remember the events that led me to say, yeah, I'm going to do it. But I did it. And I started. And lo and behold, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that crazy. I think what really excited me the most was, man, I get to have bacon and eggs every day. Cool. Let's crack on at it. Now, the one thing that I struggled with when I started keto was the lapsing and going back and forth to the sugars. I always allowed myself that, at the end of the week or the end of 2 weeks, I would have a treat. It was always that cycle. But it was much better than my lifestyle that I was living. So I noticed differences in weight loss. I was feeling good about myself, that, and I wasn't dead. It's what I'm trying to say. I thought that the carbohydrates that I wasn't eating would deplete me and make me feel like a zombie at work, but it didn't. So I think it would have been around, at least 80 grams of carbs at that time, 50 to 80 grams of carbs. So keto, low carbish. And of course, I'm wanting to learn more and self-educate myself because I feel like I'm doing something right for the first time in my life. So I dug deep into the good old YouTubes and watched the videos from, Dr. Ken Berry, Jason Fung, that time. And there was a channel called Low Carb Down Under. Oh man, I binged and binged and binged. And, it got me to a point of thinking, wow, why doesn't anyone else know about this? And so I started talking to people about keto and how good it was. And again, it was just people's, red alerts like, what the hell? Eating a high-fat diet, that's not good for you. Don't do it. So I kind of laid low. I didn't tell people I was doing keto. And then I started to see carnivore come up on my feed.
And
Now,
let me just ask you, were you still on medication at the time? Were you still taking the
Yes.
prescriptions that your
Yeah.
doctor had given you, your statins and whatever else
Yeah.
was needed to keep your health in check? Right.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention it. Yeah, I was taking statins. I was taking blood pressure tablets. I was taking pain medications. What else was I was taking a lot of things actually. There was a bunch of other issues that that kept coming up, like joint pain and stuff like that. But yes, I was on multiple medications. I was still at that time. I believe I was starting to take the cholesterol tablets when I was in keto. Yeah. And yeah, I just remembered seeing these carnivore videos. And the first one I saw was from Dr. Paul Mason. Talks about fiber not being essential. And then if I thought, carbs were not required, was a red alert, this was really the red alert for me. I thought, let's stay clear away from any of this carnivore stuff. But it was almost like a magical pull. Like it just kept on. Kept on being drawn by these characters. Plants are trying to kill you. Sean Baker eating a big, massive steak in front of him.
With a sword.
With a sword. It was gravitating. So, look, I was hooked. I got hooked. So I'm like, all right, let's get into the content. And the more I was self-educating myself, the more I realized this doesn't sound so crazy. And again, it just drove me to a point where one day I just decided to say, yep, let's commit. Let's go carnivore. And I can clearly remember this. My wife was giving birth to my second child. And I told myself, right, this is when I'm going to start carnivore. I'll remember this day because it's my daughter's birthday. I left the hospital to get something to eat. I drove by the nearest burger joint. I got on my phone. I started listing the things that I can get out of my diet. Like, I'm already doing keto. It shouldn't be that hard. And I kid you not, Patrick, there was not 10 things that I could list that I wasn't already excluding. Because let's face it, I never liked vegetables growing up. I never liked veggies. So, all of that stuff on keto, I was slowly cutting out anyway. So I thought, oh, this is easy. All I have to do is just cut out a few foods, and that's carnivore. And I remember going to the burger shop and buying like 6 or 7 patties, or however many. I can't remember. All I can remember was it was the most damn expensive burger I've ever paid for my life. And I ate it. I thought, this feels good. All right, let's see how this goes. And that got the ball rolling. And honestly, it was just a whirlwind.
When was
I
this?
felt this was in 2021.
Right.
2021, in the middle of COVID, where everything was gone a bit crazy and haywire. Everything was locked down, and I was on this carnivore diet. I can't even remember ever weighing myself prior to carnivore. When I was doing keto and all the other diets, I was always on the scales, just seeing, oh, have I gone up and down? Have I do I cut my calories back? But on carnivore, I forgot. I was just feeling too good. The biggest thing that I really noticed, I kid you not, it's not the weight loss that amazes me the most. It's the freaking mental clarity and just a switch in your mind that maybe people say it's when you tap into ketosis or when you feel fat adapted, but I just felt a huge burden unload. I felt mentally clear, and I just felt like I could tackle life in a different way. That was the most surprising thing to me. The weight loss, like, I didn't notice it until probably 6 months down the track when I'm like, okay, I'll step onto the scales. Oh shit, 30 kilos gone. Then a couple more months later, I lost another 10 kilos. So in total, I lost 40 kilos. Didn't think much of it at the time, but I started to tell people, show people on social media what I've been doing. And everyone was, oh my gosh, you look amazing. You look good. And I'm like, mate, I can't even, I'm in such I'm in such a mood that weight was not really an issue for me at that time. It was the way that I was feeling, I didn't care. Anyways, I'm sort of raving on about that same point, but yeah.
No, but it's true. I mean, let me just interrupt you there. This is what I've noticed personally, and what I hear consistently speaking with people who turn to a carnivore diet. We all tend to say the same. Okay, I never had weight issues. I actually had to gain weight because I was well malnourished. But of course, 99.9% of the people were overweight. They all say like, okay, weight loss was kind of secondary. Weight loss was a byproduct, but the mental clarity. Yeah, everybody speaks, and the same for me. The mental clarity, the energy was like you got lifted out of this fog that you didn't realize you lived in. It's like, when you're a fish, you don't realize you swim in water. You realize it when you're taken out of the water. And that's the same with the brain fog. You never realize that you were living in this fog until you get lifted out of the fog. And everybody raves about that, including me. It's amazing. It's the standard story. It's true.
It is. It's so true. And you have to experience it to really understand what we're talking about, because for a long time, for pretty much my entire life, I can say now that it's definitely anxiety. I had huge anxiety issues, and the way that I tackled life, I was always, I don't know, like it just felt like I was never in control of things. I would spiral, and I would try and comfort myself with food or alcohol. And now it's like, man, I don't need any of that stuff. What do I do? Actually, most of us, when we do carnivore diet, we go OMAD, or we cut back on how many meals we eat, right? The crazy thing was, because I'm eating less and I'm only eating once or twice a day, I've got all this spare time. I've always been a busy person. Everything is busy. But all of a sudden, I'm not a busy person anymore. It's crazy. But, hey, it's you got to experience it to really
True.
to believe it. Yeah. But yeah, so that's how I got into carnivore. And it's been 5 years now. Almost 5 years. Yeah.
What was the hardest to reconcile, especially working inside the medical system?
Okay. That's a can of worms now. Let's do
Here we
this.
go. Now the question has been asked.
Okay, so this was the reason why I decided to go out on social media. It is bittersweet to know that your health is improving, knowing that this could potentially save many lives and potentially do so much good for people out there. Yet, there are so many restrictions in the position that I'm in. I know my scope of practice as a nurse. Okay, so I have to practice within my scope. It's my job. I still work as a nurse now. So I see chronic conditions every day at the face of it. And I just wish that some of these people would go down this path. If not carnivore, keto. If not keto, cut out all the processed foods out of your diet. But still, the carnivore diet is amazing. Like this is something that I think most people can easily do. Now, the way I have gone around this, the way that I feel I'm doing my part in getting the message across is to lead by example. It can never, I shouldn't say it can never, but we're a damn long way away from carnivore ever being accepted as something that could be therapeutic and help people in the healthcare system. We're a long way away from that. What can I do to show people that this is working for me? I'll go on social media. All right. That's what started me on social media. And that built me confidence to talk to people about it in real life. Because a lot of the conversations that I had with people went either two ways. One, good on you, congratulations, you lost weight. Or two, oh, carnivore, like that's insane. Why would you do that? So many questions, and it was it kind of felt a bit intimidated. I felt intimidated by some of how people would speak to you about it, and so I thought, no, let's do it on social media and let people see exactly what I do, show people what I eat, talk about the things that I've learned, and share videos online. And at that time at work, it was just me and my friend who introduced keto that were doing carnivore. Within a year or two, multiple people in the system started doing it. Doctors were asking me about it.
Really?
It was, and to me, that was, I did nothing. I didn't tell or prescribe anything. I didn't treat anyone with a carnivore diet. I was just telling them my story. So the sweet part of this all is I realize that people don't like being told what to do. They like to be in control. And so when they start seeing and start to realize that, wow, this guy's actually doing this and he's actually doing very well, they start to try it. I've got colleagues who tried it and have passed it along to their partners, and their partners are doing it. Then their kids are doing it. So I must be doing something right here. So the way that I've angled my approach in doing my part in society is to lead by example. Social media plays a huge role in that, but just practicing what you preach and talking about it, having these conversations out loud, going on podcasts, these things need to happen. And even though it's just the way I look at it, even if it's just a conversation between two people that maybe few hundreds or thousands are watching, it trickles down. And they may not think about what we're talking about now as a big thing. It might just go through their minds. But the next conversation they hear might trigger something. Who knows? But it starts with conversation. And so I started to feel confident in the way that I was talking to people, including my patients. So I never ever, if I'm working at work, and I never ever talk about carnivore. I never bring it up. I wait for someone else to bring it up, and I wait for that opportunity to come in. So, for example, if a patient asks, what did you eat today for breakfast? I'll say something crazy like, I had a kilo of steak, and they'll laugh. They'll laugh it out, and they'll, ha 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 ha, ha, that's funny. No, what did you really eat? No, I had a kilo of steak. Or I'll say something like, I haven't eaten for about 3 days. And, that really starts a conversation. It's hilarious to them, or they're a bit shocked. They're, what the hell? What's going on? And so, I know that a lot of people don't gravitate towards being outlandish on social media and, people eating sticks of butter, but it really does get the attention of people. Yeah. So that's,
So,
yeah,
but
sorry.
are you in a tricky spot there because of your job? That you're not a
Yeah.
dietitian, you're not a nutritionist, you're not a doctor, you're not supposed to give out nutritional advice. You're going completely against mainstream. Now you have somebody asking you, what do you eat? You tell them I ate, I ate a kilo of steak this morning. They're going to be asking more or not. I mean, they have the choice to either leave it there or ask more. How careful do you need to be telling them about your diet?
Well, it's my diet. It's my body. I can tell them anything I want. Like, we're having a conversation, human beings. This is what I'm doing. And if they start asking questions about the way, I've my thought process, like, why are you doing this? I'll just be honest. This is what I've learned. I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you that this is right or wrong. This is just what I'm doing. I try not to get deep into the science. If I have to, I show a video, or I tell them, hey, if you've got usually my patients are elderly, so I say, if you've got a family member, that can, I don't know, show you on your iPad how to watch YouTube, I'll send them a video. I'll tell them to watch this guy. Look up Dr. Paul Mason. Look up Anthony Chafee, Sean Baker, and they can look at it themselves. But I try and always keep it personal experience. I never go beyond what my scope is. I don't tell people to do it. I just show them what I do, and that's all. That is strictly it. It's all informal conversation. But if they do want more, I tell them, look, there's information online. The world, the internet is full of it. There's so much information about the carnivore diet that I don't need to explain it, because it's all out there. It's the movement is growing. So yeah, in a way, right now I don't feel restricted, or I don't. I look at it from a very optimistic angle that, uh, you know, I'm not going head on into a battle thinking that I'm going to lose my job, because, hey, it's my body. I do whatever I want to do. They can't fire me for that.
Yeah, and you're such a beautiful example. I mean, how, as you said earlier, which really surprised me, is like even you had doctors asking. So now all
Yeah.
of a sudden there's this area in Australia where you work that has seen this ripple effect of
Yes.
carnivore within the medical system, not just in general, but within the medical system. At what point is that now?
So at this point, I think I can count up to at least over 10 people within the work that do carnivore, or that have done carnivore. surely more than that. I'm thinking more than that probably now. And I don't know. I'm not saying that in a way to brag that it was because of me, but yeah, I just it, it it's like this. When you talk to me about it, I could go on and on and on and on and on. We could go nonstop about this, and I realize that people, when they're interested, they will give it a go and they will try it. Now, I'm also a health coach. I coach people to make lifestyle changes, and in particular, with the carnivore diet. Friends and family have reached out, and it started from there. It started with the basics of, cutting out carbohydrates, like just straight up sugar, because that's bad for you, sugar and seed oils. And they try doing things like, adding more fats into the diet, adding more animal foods, and they start to feel good. And the message seeps through that ways. Yeah, it's a growing movement here, Patrick, and I'm optimistic about it. Here in Brisbane, we do have a Brisbane carnivore community, and we recently had a workshop late last year, and it was a good turnout. So it's something that I think will start to boom in the next couple of years, and I hope wherever you are in the world as well, Patrick, that it starts to grow where you are as well.
Yeah. Just wanted to take it back, Joff. You were on
Mm.
all these medications when you were doing
Yeah.
everything right.
Mm.
What happened with your cholesterol? What happened with your lipids, your blood values, all the things once you turned carnivore? Because your cholesterol must have been really affected.
You know what? To be honest, I fired my doctor, and I didn't end up going back after they told me that if I ate a high fat diet, that it would ruin. It's not good for you. But my body was saying something different, and what I had learned about cholesterol is contradicting what people are saying. They say that cholesterol blocks your arteries. They say that cholesterol causes heart disease. But there's no evidence for that. In fact, they get it so wrong that they mix up cholesterol and LDL. They're not even two of the same thing. They're different things. So if doctors are making that mistake, it makes me really question what it is that I'm doing to my body. I don't think a lot of doctors really know what a statin actually does. I don't think they understand that it's not just inhibiting cholesterol, but you're inhibiting a whole bunch of things that are vital for your health. Things like CoQ10, your sex hormones, vitamin D production. What else? So many things cholesterol is needed for, and you are wiping it out. You're wiping out that pathway for your body to create its own cholesterol, whilst taking out a bunch of other things as well that is needed. It didn't make sense. And in fact, my personal experience with taking statins, I had the side effects of the muscle pain. So within about 3 days of taking a statin, I was getting the muscle pains. And yeah, I haven't been to a doctor since, Patrick, to be honest, since I went carnivore. And I don't intend to. At this stage in my life, I feel much better than I did when I was in my 20s. I'm 35 right now, and yeah, I feel like things are going in the right way. Sorry.
So you stopped taking the medications like the beta
I
blockers
did,
and the
yeah.
statins and everything. At what
I
point
did.
did you decide? Tell me about the day that you were like, "This is it. Not taking this stuff anymore."
You know what? I think I weaned myself off so the statins I stopped immediately. I can remember I was on keto. I was like, nah, look, I'm just going to stop it. And with my blood pressure tablets, I'm pretty sure I stopped it as before I went carnivore as well, because I was already stable. I was on pretty high dose as well. Um, 50 milligrams of metoprolol twice a day, for those who want to know. I started weaning myself off, and yeah, I got to a point where I'm like, just scrap it. My blood pressure's fine. And I was on keto at the time. And, you know, I kind of, it kind of skipped my mind when exactly I decided to just say or make that decision. It just happened gradually, Patrick. I can't remember, to be honest.
Have you been checking your blood pressure since? Because you said your blood pressure was fine. Apparently, you were
Yeah.
taking a lot of blood pressure medication. No
Yeah.
wonder it
Yeah.
was fine. Is this something you've been following up because it's easy to check at home and, of course, in the
Yeah.
job that you're doing as well?
That's right. Yeah. So it was something that I was doing quite frequently. I was checking my blood pressure, once every couple of days, and it was fine. It was right now, like it sits at around 110 systolic. Some might even consider that's a little bit low, but I feel great. And, that's without blood pressure tablets, and that's with me eating a so-called high-fat diet. So what does that tell you about heart disease and how people are managing it? Because here's the thing, like I've seen people eating a clean per se diet, or even a vegetarian diet, still have high cholesterol, still have high blood pressure. How does that work? They're technically they're living the A standard, the gold standard of low fat, but
Yeah.
still with these issues. I don't know. Doesn't add up.
And
It
now
doesn't add up to me.
you said in the beginning that heart disease runs in the family. Your granddad died of a stroke. You've been told like, okay, yeah, your cholesterol's high. You need to take all these medications because it is genetic. Is there still a little voice in your head that sometimes comes up and is like, Joff, remember, they died of heart attacks. Am I doing the right thing?
No, absolutely not. In my mind and in my opinion, there is absolutely no evidence that cholesterol, saturated fats, or any of the lipoproteins, LDL, will cause heart disease. No doubt in my mind. I am happy to be proven otherwise. Um, I really do have to shout out and really acknowledge one person on social media who's really brought that to light, for me personally, and that's Professor Bart K. I know a lot of people don't like his style of content where he gets a bit abrasive in the way he communicates, but the message was the way that he clearly explains how science should be interpreted. It made so much sense to me, and I've never ever felt like that ever. I always felt like I was unsure of things, but that statement or that I just said, I 100% believe that to be true. You just cannot say that cholesterol or LDL or any of the lipoproteins cause heart disease. There's no evidence for it. I still get into debates about it with people today, and no one has ever come up strong and ended the conversation with, no, you're wrong. And it's always ended with a, didn't think about it that way. So, yeah, I think the fear it runs so deep that it's so hard to erase out of your mind. It is very difficult. I can say honestly that it didn't happen overnight. It took probably a year or two for me to really understand what was going on with the cholesterol thing. It took a while for me to really get into my head and to finally have the answer that I think is correct. And that hasn't changed Patrick, that hasn't changed for 5 years. That's been on my mind for a while. Yeah.
Joff, if someone listening to this, watching this, recognizes themselves in part of your story, what feels important for them to hear?
There are two things there are two mindset shifts that I've made over the last few years that really, that I think drives the message that I want people to hear, and it hits it in the home run. And I said it at the workshop that we had here in Brisbane. You have got to be your own health expert. What I mean by that is not be a scientist or to have you're not someone who needs to be a know-it-all or needs to have all the answers, but you need to be in control and to not depend on others to think for you. You've got to think for yourself, because at the end of the day, there's so much conflicting information out there, and it can get overwhelming for people to decide what's best for them. So I think for me, I would call myself an expert of my own health, because I took control and I self-educated myself to what I think is the best for me. And I can only see that when people do that, they start seeing changes in their health. I was one of those people that just, depended and just felt like, people had the answers for me. Doctors would tell me this, okay, I would follow. Doctors would tell me that, okay, do that. But I never questioned. I never, an expert, a good expert is someone who questions, always questions, you know? And a bad expert is someone who just says, I've got all the answers and you don't need to tell me. I know what's wrong or right. And yeah, I think people should really feel empowered to start self-educating and learn more about health. The other thing is, here's the thing. For a long time, and I think it is not just in my generation, but maybe a few generations back, we've been taught diet differently from how our ancestors have been, I guess, living. We've been with the food that we have nowadays, we've been eating not because of nutrition, which is the primary reason why we eat in the first place. We're now using food, and we're eating, we're basically living to eat. People are so obsessed with food, with carbohydrates, with processed foods, and people don't want to give up their ways because of that attachment to food. They use it for comfort. They use it for pleasure, for boredom. But we've got to bring it back to the roots as to why we are eating in the first place. We're eating because we need to survive and to live, to thrive, not the other way around. And that's it. That's my message to people.
Beautifully said. Joff, if people are inspired by you and they want to follow your work, they want to follow your journey, where can they find you?
Well, you can follow me mostly on Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook and on YouTube. I go under, Health Coach Joff across all platforms. And yeah, I'm happy to have any conversations if you reach out to me via DMs. Reach out to me if there's anything that resonates with you in my message or in my posts, and let's get the conversation rolling.
Amazing. I'll make sure that's written down the video, so in the show notes, so people can find you. Joff, thank you so much for having been on the show and sharing your story. I think it's super powerful what you shared. It's it just amazes me, like how in the beginning, when in your late teens, early 20s, you were doing everything according to the book and it was just not working out. Yet now you said you're 35, so we're 10, 15 years later. This is still what's happening. You're still seeing it with your patients as well. They're still being told what to eat and it's not improving them. However, when we talk about carnivore, keto, I think more and more people are getting used to. You do keto and people are like, oh, okay, because at least you eat vegetables, and your vegetables you need, of course, because they're full of your vitamins and your minerals. Carnivore is still very, very extreme. Yeah, very extreme. But it's showing to be, like there's so much proof of people like for whom it doesn't just make a marginal improvement on their health, but this massive improvement. And you're such a beautiful example of that. And I think that really shone through in how you expressed your story here. So, man, I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank you for sharing so openly, even because I can imagine it must be tricky working in the medical field. You know, I don't work in the medical field. I can say whatever I want. I get people pissed off, but they're not going to take away my job. For you, it must be a kind of a thin line to walk where someone might come up to you one day and say, Joff, you have to stop talking about this, what they call bullshit, because your license or whatever nurse license you have might be in jeopardy. So I find it very brave you came on and to just share your story openly like this and to promote health, basically, like you did. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Patrick. I again, it's an honor to be here and to have this conversation with you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Amazing. And for everybody back home, if you are as inspired as I am by Joff's story, if you recognize yourself in his story, perhaps leave a comment down below. I'd love to see how this felt for you. Don't forget to press the like button. Of course, I would love for you to subscribe as well, because there is more podcasts like these coming. And if there's somebody in your life who you care about a lot and you believe that Joff's story might resonate with them, please share this podcast with them. You never know when the seed that you're planting is going to be sprouted, even within yourself. So thank you very much again for watching, and welcome to your upgrade.
Thank you for watching the Patrick Alexander podcast.